Hey, everybody, and welcome to Falcons Audible, presented by AT&T. I'm Dave Archer. I got some dogs with me. I got the Georgia Bulldog, DJ Shockley, and I got Will McFadden with me. And Will is dialed in, AtlantaFalcons.com, senior editor, writer, aficionado. My man knows everything. So we got Will with us today. Appreciate you guys joining me today with this thing. What a week, okay? So if hyperbole can kind of spew from anywhere, but early season, we're 5 games in, and I've been doing these games a long time, as you guys know. I think these are the 2 most impactful wins, early season wins, that I've seen this club have in a long time.
Yeah.
Well, you've been talking to fans and all sorts of stuff. Is that over the top?
No, I don't think that's over the top at all. I think, when you start off with the fact that these are 2 division wins, and we knew how early in the season they were going to have to be firing on all cylinders, but then when you see the way that they're getting these wins, kind of the full team aspect of it, complementary football, especially late in games. I know they're still looking for kind of the 4 quarters complementary part, but like, who isn't at this time of the year, right? So to get plays from the defense to set up the offense going down the field to set up special teams, I do think that that's going to mean something, and it's great to see early on in the year. So, no, I don't think that's a hyperbole at all.
Arch, when I think about what you just mentioned, the first thing that comes to mind for me, and it's a term that we use all the time when we're playing, sweat equity. And when you win games like this, you build the sweat equity to go forward in the season. And you think about, man, usually teams don't get here till like week 8, week 9 when, everybody really finds out who they are and this team is finally coming together and you got a big win on the road somewhere. But the fact you've done it so early in the season with how these games have gone, like we just talked about, it builds sweat equity within your team. And then I know Coach Rod talks about it all the time, is the results. So you put the sweat equity in, you go into a ball game and things happen, and then you see the results come out in your favor. Oh, that's major confidence for your team. Like, we all know, we've seen coaches talk the biggest talk, and everything sounds good in preseason. Everything sounds good in that first game. But until it actually happens, that's when guys really start to believe it. Yeah, you believe in your coach. You understand what he's saying. But until you actually go out and, it comes down to that last, series of the game, and then, both sides, all guys, lean on each other, and you see come out, you build that sweat equity within your program, within your organization, and you have these big-time wins. It propels you, I think, going forward that, hey, this happened so early in the year and happened in meaningful games, and then it's happened within your division. Because I think we all talked about it before the season started. Man, this start of the season is going to be a gauntlet. Yeah. And then you got to go 3 games into the division. That's going to be a gauntlet. And look where we stand right now because of the way it's finished out. You feel really good about where you stand.
Well, unless you've been under a rock, Atlanta won on Sunday in dramatic fashion as Younghoe Koo kicked one from 58 yards to beat the Saints. And then 4 days later beat another division rival in Tampa Bay, a team I thought was red hot coming in with Baker Mayfield. 36-30 in overtime in dramatic fashion, coming from behind in regulation and then getting the win in overtime with a walk-off with Kadero Hodge. So, Shock, give me something that stuck out in this game to you that, in one thing, because I got to limit Shock. Shock will talk about 6 things.
He's greedy. He'll take it all.
One thing that stuck out to you in this game that maybe is a carryover thing, it's something that you feel we can hang our hat on. Tell me about it.
I think the one thing that comes to mind when you say that is another cliche term, which is the next man up mentality. You think about J.D. Bertrand stepping in and playing a big role. Obviously, they didn't have him on the field every single play, but there were times I remember on the goal line when he stood. I don't know who it was. He stood somebody up and then get in the end zone. J.D. Bertrand, Ruka Rowe, who we saw for the first time get a chance to play and actually was, throwing dudes around. How about the man who scores the winning touchdown? How many times did he have to come in for Drake, who, was in and out of the lineup because of injuries, and he's in and he seizes that opportunity? This is the literal term of next man up. And we say the term, you hear the term all the time, and it sounds so cliche, but you can actually see it happen on the field in a big-time ball game. And the Falcons had so many guys who, when their opportunity, when their name, their number was called, they stepped up and they played their part. And, I think we've talked about it a few times where Ross talks about, hey, are we going to when people say, should they bring in somebody else? And Ross always said, I'm so good with the guys we got on this roster. And I think it speaks volumes that he said that, and then we saw those guys step in those moments and fill those voids for guys who maybe been out for a couple plays or out for a game, and they stepped up and were big.
Will, what'd you see on Thursday night that has some staying power?
Yeah, I mean, even to follow that up, though, there was a two-play sequence. J.D. Bertrand, Clark Phillips down there at the goal line made two great plays back-to-back, and it was like, all right, that's what we're talking about with guys stepping up and making big plays in big moments. But I look at the passing game. I know that was something a lot of fans were kind of waiting to see operate at that level. But when you got Drake London and Darnell Mooney both over 100 yards making huge plays, like that catch that Darnell Mooney made down in the end zone against what looked like triple coverage, it was probably like real double coverage. But
Arch, would you ever make that throw?
I said it on the broadcast. There's nothing on the play that takes you there with the read.
Right.
I even said it to Kirk, what took you there? And he goes, I probably shouldn't have thrown that one.
Oh, my goodness. I'm watching the game. It's just funny you bring that up because I'm watching the game, too. I wanted to hear Archer's thought on it. But I'm watching the game, and he throws that football. I said, oh, no.
Yep. That was my first thought.
Oh, no, with 3-4 guys around him. And
there's absolutely nothing on the read that takes you there.
that is
so flabbergasted.
It's literally supposed to be the clear out route.
Yeah.
And Kirk
But it's just the level of trust, I feel like. And Tori McElhaney pointed it out way back at the start of the season on Falcons' Final Whistle. She said she felt Darnell Mooney would be the team's leading receiver when all is said and done. And I think when you look at the offenses that Kirk Cousins has been a part of and the level of receiver play he has sustained at the quarterback position, there's no doubt in my mind that he can get, Drake London involved, Darnell Mooney, Kyle Pitts, Ray McLeod. So I think that this passing offense took a big step forward, and I only expect to continue or to see it continue to get refined. But that is, I think, will be a huge part of the remainder of the season.
What do we need to do? We'll go back to 2020, I think, was the last time Atlanta had
Week 1.
We had 3 that day. Russell Gage was the third that had got over 100 yards that day. That was the last time we had 2 over 100 yards in a game. You go back to 2021 when someone threw for over 500 yards in a game. That was Joe Burrow. And then you got to go back to 2021, 40-plus completions, Kirk Cousins with 42 completions. Pretty interesting. What were your guys' thoughts on him breaking the all-time passing record, Will?
We can't go past without getting yours.
I mean,
the people need to hear from Orange. I know you're on
the
show today.
You guys went. I love. We got 3 different answers here because you went next man up. You went offense, which is a great choice, and all the things that are going on with the offense as it continues to grow and get better. I'm going to go ahead and flip it to the defensive side, give them a little love. Think about late in the football game, late in the third quarter, you get a sequence of plays where the score's 24-20. Tampa is driven to inside the Atlanta 15-yard line. I think 1st and 10 at the 11-yard line. Grady Jarrett bursts through and gets a tackle for loss. Okay? The very next play, they hit the tight end. You make a tackle. It might have been J.D. Bertrand that came up, made the tackle for about a 4 or 5 yard play. And then David Onyemata bursts through and gets a sack, forces the field goal. Why is that a big deal? Well, it kept it a 1-score game. They kicked a field goal there. Atlanta went right down the field and tied the game. Then you go late in the football game. You need the ball back. It's inside 3 minutes to go. And who comes up? The guy that's got more ball hawking skills than anybody I've ever seen. Jesse Bates pushes the ball out. You get the football back. Now, we don't do anything with it on offense. In fact, we go backwards on offense. And Kirk has to force one into coverage because it's 4th down. It's picked off. What's the defense do? They come in and force them out of field goal range where they can't even kick a field goal.
Yeah, unbelievable.
So I just thought, okay, we got next man up. We got offense. I thought I'd throw a little love to the defense. Even though it was a 36-30 game, got some defense involved there. So the Kirk Cousins numbers are astronomical. We had a really cool moment we celebrated on Thursday night where Matt Ryan went into the Ring of Honor. The impact of Kirk doing that, I mean, is it irony? I mean, how would you paint that as a writer as 503, the guy that hit 503s in the building and the guy at 509s on the field?
I think I said this in the post-game podcast, but it was literally like that gif of look at me, I am the captain now. I'm surprised that he wasn't doing that right after the game. But yeah, it was ironic, but it was fitting in a way. It was kind of a passing of the torch, I think. And when we mentioned the wide receiver numbers as well, it's like, for so much of the 21st century, this offense has been defined by the passing game, partially because of Matt Ryan. But, just with the ways that I think it was ahead of the curve a little bit early on in Matt Ryan's time with the Falcons. So to see it really get back on track the night that he is going into the Ring of Honor was fitting in some ways, but honestly, it was a little bit ironic that's the game where Kirk sets the all-time record.
Well, and we're talking about, if I'm not mistaken, the night he threw for 500 yards was the night that Julio went for 200 yards himself. So more impressive shock that all of a sudden you've got, you got Drake with 150, you got Mooney with 109, you got Kyle with 88, you got Cadero with 67.
Yeah.
The diversity or the disparity and the spreading it around to everybody. More impressive, this one?
I think so. I mean, just the distribution of it. I mean, you look at that ball game, you look at how many ways that Falcons offense could attack you. First off, congrats to Drake, 4th fastest Falcon to reach 2,000 receiving yards, just 38 games. Kirk, 18th all-time now in touchdowns at 276. But the way they went about it, I thought, was hard to stop. Because you look up and you say, yeah, Drake's always had pretty good games versus Tampa. He's played well. He was playing really well in that ball game. But then you got Ray here on 3rd down. You got Darnell Mooney here catching a curl route to convert. You got Kyle, running down the seam, busting through. I mean, it was so many options that he had in this ball game. And as a defensive coordinator looking at this ball game, you say, okay, what do we take away? Who do we try to attack? Do we try to go after Kirk? And he did such a great job of getting the ball out of his hands. I mean, just listen to him talk to you after the game, Arch. You can hear the mental processing that he goes through on every single play. Even the play we just talked about with Mooney, I heard him say, you know what? I really didn't have much on that play. I saw them dropping a little bit, and I felt like that was the best play, so I just shot it. And that's called just trusting it. And as a QB, to have that kind of trust and confidence in your receivers goes a long way. And obviously, with him spreading it around, it shows you he has that trust and confidence. And one thing I lean on is, what did everybody say after week 1? After watching them play versus Pittsburgh, and you hear guys come in the press conference and say, you know what, there's just a couple things here and there. There are a couple little plays, there are a couple little execution things that if we clean those up, we're going to be really special. We're going to be really good. And then you see a game like this happen, and you say it's not just talk. These guys actually are starting to get better week in and week out, and that's all you can ask for as you grow into this season with all the new pieces that you have. So I thought it was really impressive the way they went about it and the way they moved the football around. And so many guys, were part of it, and it keeps a lot of dudes happy, as we know. In this league, guys want their touches, guys want the football. And if you got a chance to do that and you get a chance to win too, oh, man, it's a dynamic thing.
I think it was 12 or 13 plays of 15 yards or more. You were looking for that explosive. 81 plays on offense to 51 for Tampa. You talk about a complete flip from the first 4 games, right?
True.
All right, so we know all the kind of things that went well, and we know how coaches are. You talk to coaches all the time. Shock and I have played for guys. They're never happy with anything.
No.
Hey, good to get the win, but what do we fix? I think there's a lot of things, even with this Atlanta team at 3-2, that there are things you could really adjust. Will, for you, what sticks out to you that Atlanta needs to really continue to work on and try to get fixed?
Penalties. For me, I mean, that is especially offensive penalties. Because when you look at the defensive side of the ball, I want to say the Falcons are one of the best in the league in terms of defensive penalties, meaning they have the fewest. And it really is just these drives that begin with a false start or where you've got a hold. And, I don't want to single anybody out, but I will just because I spoke to him after the game. But Matthew Bergeron, even in a win like this that was, exhilarating, you could tell that he was seriously kind of grappling with some of the plays that he's had over the last couple of weeks. And I can tell that they're taking this stuff seriously because they understand how thin the margins are in this league. And when one of those drives, all it took was one of those drives getting derailed because of an untimely penalty. And when you see what the ceiling is, and honestly, the ceiling could have been even higher on Thursday night, that just shows you what this team is capable of, but it also highlights how detrimental those penalties can be because of what they can ultimately cost you. So I think that is the attention to detail part that we'll start to see getting ironed out over the next few weeks.
That's such a great point. In Atlanta even scored a touchdown and overcame 2 major penalties in one drive, had 2 holding penalties that they ultimately got the ball in the end zone. That doesn't happen very often. Great point there, Will. You don't derail yourself. It's hard enough to gain yards, let alone give it back. Shock, what's something that sticks out for you that Atlanta really needs to continue to work on and try to move toward a little bit better success in?
I think we're still in the phase of trying to figure out how best we can affect the quarterback. And I think, obviously, the big thing that everybody looks at is sacks and the numbers, and I think that that's still an issue right now. Obviously, you bring in Matthew Judon. You hope some of the guys around him can help in that. But I think we're still struggling on getting to the quarterback. But I think you've done a good job of trying to affect the quarterback. Now, that's two different things, and I think the Falcons are in a space where they're trying to create the pressure. They're forcing the issue, and sometimes they're just not getting home. Or we've played against some really good quarterbacks, to be honest. And a lot of guys know where to get the football out, where to go. You also played against some athletic quarterbacks. So sometimes if you may be home, they find a way to get out of it. And, we know the deal on that. But I think affecting a quarterback is still something that we are searching for. It's something that we still are hungry for. And that's something I know fans are really wanting to see get done, is us get the quarterback on the ground. And I know it's going to come with time. I know Jimmy Lake and his staff are working hard as ever. I know they want to get to the quarterback, and no defensive coordinator says, we're just good with affecting the quarterback or being around them. You want to get them on the ground. But I think once that starts happening, then you start being able to get off the field. You start being able to create more turnovers. All those things kind of work hand in hand together. But right now, through 4 or 5 games of the season, you're still near the bottom of the league when it comes to getting that quarterback on the ground.
I'll tell you one area, guys, that I'm a little concerned about, and I love the coach who runs it, so I'm not overly concerned, and that's Marquise Williams in special teams. But our kickoff coverage units are struggling a little bit.
Yeah, it's a good call.
It's interesting, too, because we think about injury and how it impacts defense and how it impacts the offensive side of the football, but we don't think about the depth, because those guys now step up and start, and then you got to take them off some of the special teams. And so some of these guys you elevate off the practice squad or whoever, they now step into some of those roles, and they haven't been repping it.
Yeah.
They got that reps that week, but they haven't necessarily gotten the reps. So, but the kickoff coverage unit, I think most teams are still trying to figure this out. And Will, I don't know if you've tracked this yet, but I mean, it's interesting to kind of watch other games as to how people are kicking off and what they're trying to do to it's the new dynamic kickoff, how to manipulate it. But you're already giving the team, if you kick it in the end zone, to the 30-yard line. And that, if you look at the numbers of teams that start at their 20 and start at their 30, the numbers go dramatically up as your chances to put points on the board. Now all of a sudden they start at the 35, or they had a couple returns. One return out over the 50 in this game. Have you had any conversation there, and what's your thoughts on what's going on there as far as the different ideas as to how to play that?
Yeah, I'll be honest, actually. There's not the level of creativity I expected to see, even from week 1 on till now. Like, I thought it would be a little bit of an open season, and that they were playing coy all throughout the preseason, and then it'd be like, boom, week 1 hits, like now we're getting the craziest returns you've ever seen. It hasn't been that way. Yeah. And to be honest, in the conversations that I've had with special teams coaches and players, like, I can't tell if they're being cagey and that they do actually have some things up their sleeves, or if what we're seeing is just kind of what we're getting, and they haven't really cracked the code yet on these rule changes, and maybe there's not really a code to be cracked, because all these guys are amazing athletes and they can cover space, and they're well equipped to do it. So, yeah, I think the jury's a little out so far on the new kickoff rule, but I do remember one thing Keith Armstrong saying back, when he was here in Atlanta, is anytime there is a rule change like this, and usually we see it on special teams, teams are racing to figure out, like, what is that edge that we can gain, and the first one to figure it out, if there really is one to be gained there, like, they will have a legitimate advantage in some of these games based on special teams.
I'll be honest, I feel like watching a lot of games around the league, and not even just the Falcons, because it's been a little bit different, but just watching other games, I felt like teams have had more success when they pooch it. They pooch it kind of like in the corner or something, and that kind of shrinks the field for them, and now you get everybody coming into one area, and teams are not getting back to the 25-yard line. So I think, for me personally, I still think the jury's out on it for sure. I think some teams have had some success. They got it out and had some good runs here and there. Maybe a couple be missed. But I think for the most part, from what I've seen, is when they pooch it in the corner, that's when teams have had more success of covering those kicks and having a little bit more success as opposed to just kicking it down the middle of the guy running back.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Well, make no mistake, we've got one of the best in the game at trying to figure this thing out, and that's Marquise Williams. I don't think there's anybody better in the league. Got some good ones around the league, there's no question, but there's nobody better than Marquise in figuring out what's going on and how you move your chess pieces around to try to get the most out of that. And obviously the flip side of that is getting some returns. We've got two guys that are dynamic back there, in Avery Williams and Ray McLeod, so providing them some opportunities certainly in special teams is another thing that we need to continue to work on. A couple other things that jump out. Obviously, you got to continue to tackle well, especially if you're going to play defense the way you are, the way you're kind of playing a little bit softer and allowing them to throw the football underneath. That's something. The third down thing was a huge, huge point of emphasis this week. I think that in credit the team for getting, and that's another point I want to get to. Let me get to this before I start talking about that. The growth of this football team from a maturity standpoint. You win a huge game in dramatic fashion on Sunday, 58-yard field goal. This is a young football team. You got a bunch of young guys. For them to reboot the system and get ready again in 4 days to play speaks to the maturity of the team, I think, don't you?
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, you mentioned that it is young, but it is a young team that got kind of older, I think, quickly during training camp.
Good call.
When they added guys like Justin Simmons and Matt Judon late, I thought that would have just as big an impact in the locker room as anywhere else. And when you already have players like Jesse Bates, Grady Jarrett, Jake Matthews, like the core is in place. And I think Raheem Morris, a lot of people like to talk about his energy and his personality and the impact he's having on the building. I think the biggest impact he's having is allowing these guys to kind of be themselves and giving them the space to operate and really take ownership of this team and of this locker room. And so to your point, like that is a great green flag that we see them go from a really emotional, impassioned game and then on a short week turn right back around against a good team and in another like thrilling late game, like the emotional toll that these 5 games probably have taken, to still see them persevere, it does mean a lot. And again, like as the season continues to unfold, I think we will see them get better in these details, but the perseverance and personality part of this team, they've already kind of answered a lot of questions that I had. And again, they needed to be doing it right now at this time, given what the stretch is that they're currently in.
Shock, before we turn the page and go to Carolina, walk us through that final sequence. No timeouts. Rod does a really good job. Raheem does a really good job of taking care of the time, using the timeouts, and the defense does a good job of shoving them out of field goal range, which provides us the opportunity to need a field goal to tie it.
Yeah.
So take me through your thought process there as you take the field with no timeouts left, knowing I've got to get Younghoe Koo at least to the other team's 40-yard line, somewhere in that neighborhood.
I think as a quarterback, the first thing you think about is the first play has to be a productive one. The first play of a drive always has to be one that gets you going. And understanding you got no timeouts, understanding where to go with the football. And it's not just the quarterback. If you watch the sequence of the last, couple plays of the ball game or leading into that field goal, you think about, here's a situation where we got a lot of opportunity. We got a lot of options for us. And people think, let's go to the sideline. Let's, find creative ways to throw it down the field. And I thought Zach Robinson and Kirk Cousins and that whole offense was very strategic about how they wanted to get to a certain spot, a certain area on the field. And a lot of people are like, man, you ran that slant at the last part of it. But I think they had a great strategy in mind of where to go with it. And then you watch every single other guy on the field. And here's the thing that a lot of people or people are not talking a lot about is the process of going to that point of where the football has to be, put down and everything else. If you watch the play before or you watch the play where he throws a slant to Drake London, my man News is running a 40 all the way to Drake London to get to the football. Because he understands, for one, if I get lined up as fast as I can, every single other person on that offense can get lined up as well.
That's Ryan Newsel, by the way. Ryan Newsel, yeah, the center.
And he does such a good job of sprinting to the football, getting lined up, and every other guy, you got to have 7 guys on the line of scrimmage. So it don't matter where you're at, get lined up. It's some guys teams work on all the time. But in that clutch moment, each guy was prepared. And that tells you about what their staff does week in and week out to get these guys ready to play. Yeah, these are professional players, but they also have to go through the nuances of a ball game, and this is one, ending the game. And this is something that they prepared for that gave them an opportunity to go win a ball game. So, yeah, the energy's great. Raw, sounds good. Everything's good. But guess what? These coaches are teaching, too. These coaches are doing a great job of putting these guys in positions to win. So these guys get lined up. You see the last play, my man Bijan is standing 7 yards, off the hash, with his hands on his knees. But he understands, get set, be still. I don't care where you're at.
Move.
Just get lined up. And you're talking about just the small, minute details that give you opportunities to win a ball game. Center running to the ball. Drake handing it to the referee so they can spot it real quick. News getting down. Everybody else in their spot. And then Young Wei coming on after having a block kick, having a missed kick, and be able to have the mental aptitude to just finish a kick like that to send your team to overtime, give yourself a chance. I mean, that sequence was fun to watch, and it shows exactly what happens here, Monday through Saturday when they go through practice that people don't see, but these guys are doing the small things that's helping them win ball games.
And one more aspect of that play, if you watch where Drake London goes down, he gets right on the hash. That's where he gets tackled. Yeah. I don't know if the play is designed to go right there, but he gets it, he finds that hash, and he stays on the hash mark, and he gets tackled, ball right there.
I talked to Raheem yesterday we're taping this on a Tuesday, so I had a chance to talk to Raheem for his coach's show for the radio, and I said, "Were you okay with because I've been in those situations. Are you practicing? We're kind of right on the dividing line. 12 seconds is about the number that you need to get the play off and then get up and get it spiked." He says, yeah, Drake might have taken one too many steps on that point, but he got down in time. And as you said, Ryan Newsel got up, got the ball, he touched the ball, spiked it, and so just a tremendous operation. And it's something, as Shock said, they work on it. That's something they do that kind of stuff in practice. So it's not something that, hey, let's just see if we can figure this thing out. They do practice that. All right, well, when we turn our sights to the next division opponent, I think most fans will look at it and say, Carolina, really? Carolina? I think Atlanta's favored by 5 or 6 points in the game, which is kind of a pretty big spread in the NFL. Your thoughts on Carolina, where they're at, that they had some moments. Chuba Hubbard's played pretty well for them running back-wise. I think he fell 3 yards shy of his third consecutive 100-yard game against the Bears.
Yep.
Carolina. Yeah, I mean, when you look at kind of the tale of two teams here, at least two offenses, once Andy Dalton kind of got inserted into the lineup, they had that big Week 3 win where they, I think, surprised a lot of people. But since then, they've come back to earth a little bit. Chuba Hubbard is still their lead dog in the backfield, and he is playing really well. So that is where I think it starts when you're kind of looking at Carolina's offense, at least, is slow down that run game and then maybe take your chances with making Andy Dalton and Deontay Johnson and Xavier Legette and those guys beat you. But to me, and I like the fact that this is actually a road game, because I think it's just a different element that allows this team to really take the business trip mindset. Hey, we're going up to Carolina to do a job, to get a win, to come back and continue rolling on our way. Because after the emotions of what we've talked about in this really hard kind of 5-game slate to open up with, you could look at the Carolina Panthers, and even though this is an NFL team and there are no gimme games in the NFL, this is a different caliber, at least on paper, of opponent than what you've played the first 5 weeks. So I like that this is a road game. I like that the Falcons, I think, will be a very business approach mindset and go in and get the job done. So yeah, it's a little bit of a trickier one than I think a lot of fans are thinking at this point, but it's a division game at the end of the day, and it's extremely important.
Man, that's such a good point. I think that to be able to kind of take yourself away from the emotion of Mercedes-Benz Stadium and all the magic that's happened over the last week or so down there. I think that's a great idea, great thought there, as far as you try to dial back in to get a win you need to have. You got to go have a division win. For sure. You're on the road. Shock, Carolina is a team that has been a thorn in our side a few times. We've seen it the last couple of years. We've gone up there. Tell me about a veteran quarterback in Andy Dalton, who's on a team that they're struggling a little bit. Mindset there for him, knowing that, hey, I've won in this league and I can get it done. Your thoughts about Andy Dalton at quarterback?
First off, Arch, I know you're looking forward to going, hoping you're getting good weather. I think it ain't been good weather since I've been up there the last 2 times, right?
It's been nasty up there a few times. Yeah, it has been. And we found a way to make it even nastier the way we played up there.
But you're talking about Andy Dalton, a guy who's been around the league since like 2011. He's played a bunch of football, and he has an opportunity. And I think he realizes, hey, the first couple ball games he was in, he played pretty well. Was able to, do some good things for him and move the football, score points, something they weren't doing at the beginning of the year with Bryce Young. And now didn't have his best game last week. versus Chicago, but this is still a veteran quarterback that's been around the league, that's done it. He understands the nuances of how to play in this league. He's a guy who's, I think is doing pretty good taking care of the football this year. He's completing 65% of his passes, 5 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. But the best thing for him is, you mentioned earlier, he's got a back. He's got a dude that's downhill, that's physical, that runs in Chuba Hubbard. This guy's got 315 yards rushing in the last 3 ball games. Archie, you just mentioned he had 200-yard games. I think he had 95, 97 in the last ball game, averaging over 5.8 a carry. And next closest to him is Miles Sanders with 27 carries. So expect to see a lot of Chuba Hubbard in this ball game. And we talked about it the last few games. The Falcons have kind of struggled with that interior run from opposing teams. And this is going to be a guy who they absolutely are going to force the issue when you call run the football. So if you think about the quarterback and what he means, similar to what we have here, similar to what every other team in the National League talks about, is having a good run game absolutely helps a quarterback, regardless of what year he's in. If you can have a guy who can be productive, it gives you a chance to go play. Now, on the other side, you're talking about a team that's given up, I think, 143 points in their 4 losses this year. They got to find a way to slow this offense down. They're going to look up and say, man, these dudes threw for 500 yards last week. They got a bunch of dudes out there who can catch the rock. And that weighs in as well on the other side for Andy Dalton and that offense, because you look at him and say, man, these dudes are scoring. These guys are putting up points. How much does he start to press and say, all right, we had a couple good ball games where things went well, and he says, all right, here's my second opportunity to get in this game and play at a high level. And if he doesn't, he starts looking over his shoulder now. So I think this is a big moment for Andy Dalton as well, to show the Carolina Panthers organization that he still deserves to be the guy. I know they're, trying to figure out who they are as a team and has identity for him, but this is a game that the Falcons will have to make sure they're on their P's and Q's, because this is a guy who's been there and done it.
You just wonder about the atmosphere up there, and I know there's a lot of conversation about how that ship's being run and all that kind of stuff up there. I'm not going to dive into that. I don't profess to know how that's going up there, but I think we're too early in the season, fellas, for a team. I think fans might say, well, they got nothing to lose. They're 1-4. It's too early for that mindset. I think if you were in week 13, week 14, and you were, you were 2-12 or whatever, then yeah, you might have some of that. Hey, I'm playing for my NFL career, and I might be playing on another team. I think it's too early for that right now, don't you, Will?
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, when you're talking about we're 5 games into the season, yeah, there's way too early for teams to kind of, I think, be hitting the panic button. However, when you saw how things shook out last year in Carolina and, coach doesn't make it all the way through, yeah, it can be dicey in an environment like that, especially as a first-time head coach. And so I'm really curious to see the type of Carolina team that we get out there on Sunday, because they've already made one big shakeup by benching Bryce Young and going with a different quarterback. So it feels like there's, fewer and fewer levers for them to maybe pull week in and week out to get a different type of result from this team. But I'm curious to see, given the worst scoring defense in the NFL that the Panthers possess right now, and we can open up this to both of y'all, because the Falcons surprised me a little bit by taking the ball last week on Thursday against Tampa Bay. Do we expect them to do that again in this game and just say, hey, let's go ahead and take it, show we mean business, go down the field? What's the approach there?
That's a good question, because it brings up my next thought that I wanted to ask Archie about, who's been around his team, been in all these different environments, and think about our last 3-4 ball games inside Mercedes-Benz Stadium, the energy, the atmosphere, how much that helps a team, helps a player, helps you go about your business. And you just talked about the environment going to Carolina. How do you think, or what would you say the mindset should be for this team heading to an environment like Carolina, where you mentioned they're 1-4, things aren't going well. You just played on Monday night, Sunday night. You've had these electric environments. Now you go into Carolina where, quite frankly, you're going to have to bring your own juice. Do you think that plays a part in how this game could be played out as, hey, the energy is not going to be the same as it was the last few weeks?
Yeah, I think it translates to a good bit of what Will was talking about early on. The mindset has to be your own. You got to bring your own juice, right? You got to go up there, like Will was talking about, was, hey, this is a next opportunity for us to sign our own resume. Right. And our resume means we win in the division. I think this is a veteran game, too. I was thinking this last week it would be a veteran week, because what we talked about, okay, young football team that their veterans have been added to, like you talked about with Judon and Simmons, and you Kirk and what Grady and what Matthews mean to this team from a veteran standpoint. But a lot of guys that really hadn't played in impactful games, at least certainly over the last couple of seasons, even the ones that were on this team. So I thought this last week would be a veteran week. Veterans are going to get them ready to go because you're not going to game plan a ton, a lot of walkthroughs. Right. You're not going to rep a lot of stuff. And they came out and played their best football game on the offensive side, which is all about execution.
Yeah.
This one might be that. When you start talking about maybe I missed it a week, this is the week maybe the veterans have to step forward and say, listen, yeah, we just won 2 games in our building. But like Will's talking about, we got to put the hard hats back on, and we got to go to work, and we've got to go to somebody else's building. I'm wondering too. We've played in Mercedes-Benz 4 of the 5 games.
Yeah.
Okay, and so you played outside in Philly and played well. Now you're going to be outside. I don't know what the effects are of some of the weather that's going on in Florida, and you know, our hearts go out to those people. Hopefully they'll be safe down there with this hurricane coming in. But the weather and everything that's gone on with Helene and the new one coming in, are we going to get some residual? And what does that do potentially to us from an offensive standpoint or being able to execute properly?
Yeah, it's a great question. And obviously, if the weather is going to be a factor, I would expect the run game to be more involved, certainly than maybe we saw on Thursday. And that's the beauty of this type of varied approach that Atlanta is looking for, frankly, on both sides of the ball, and why I would expect maybe to see a few more 4-3 fronts on defense against a good run team with a good interior run game. And offensively, yeah, maybe let's kind of go right down the middle on them a little bit with Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson if weather is a factor. Obviously, if not, the beauty of this matchup from an Atlanta offensive perspective is that you've got a few different ways that you could look to attack Carolina's defense. So I think, again, for me, this game just keeps circling back to it's more about what the Falcons do. If the Falcons are able to take care of their business, execute on their details, I think they can have a pretty successful game on Sunday. It's more just about staying out of their own way with penalties and really being able to be on their P's and Q's.
So specific key for you in this game would be let's do a better job of eliminating the penalty. You've talked about that a couple of times. Is that where your head goes?
Yeah, I think it's a two-pronged approach. Eliminating the penalties to stay in advantageous situations out of the sticks, and then efficiency in kind of those key areas, third down and in the red zone. If they're able to really kind of execute in those 3 areas, I don't care if they have 250 yards on Sunday total. I think they'll have a successful outcome if they're able to avoid the penalties and be good on third down and in the red zone.
I know you'll look at the third down number and you'll say, well, hey, they were only 6 of 14, but factor in the fourth down as well, because that's the extension of the drive. You're 2 or 3 of those, and so now all of a sudden you're 8 of 17, and that's in about that 45, 46 percentile. That's winning football if you're right around that 50 percentile. Shock, have you got a key for me for this game against Carolina?
I think you got to get after Andy Dalton. I think that's a big part of this ball game. Obviously, if you slow him down and slow down what they want to do offensively, it gives you a chance to really put the pressure on them and score points. If you're getting after him, guess what? You're getting after the run game. You're getting after, forcing them into third long situation. Now that third down situation comes up and you get off the field. Now you got more opportunities for the guys on the other side to eat more and continue to spread that thing around. I think you got a good chance of walking out of there and feeling good about yourself.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to continue to lean on one of the areas that I was a little disturbed about early in the game, and then it got better in the second half, and it seems like that's what they've done defensively, is they got to continue to tackle well because of the way they're playing defense and the way teams are trying to attack them with underneath passing game. We've seen it 3 weeks in a row now. 3 veteran quarterbacks you've seen over the last 3 weeks. They've tried to attack you underneath. Thought that you did a better job in the second half tackling, did a better job in the second half of tackling in the New Orleans game. This will be a game they're looking to latch on to something. If they can get an explosive from Deontay Johnson or somebody drop the ball to Schubert Hubbard on a screen and find a way to get some explosive yardage that they don't necessarily earn on it because you miss a tackle or two, that might be a key for them to kind of keep this game close, if you will. That's it for you guys got anything else you want to throw on the Falcon fans out there?
We're not going to talk about the delay of game penalty?
Oh, you want to
that
talk
was
about
crazy, man.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know what to say about it. Anybody that watched the delay game, if you're not
maybe y'all can help us.
Remember,
that's all I'm saying, yeah.
If you don't remember, at the end of the game, we get in position, obviously, to kick the field goal, and the referee stands over the ball, and all our guys are just standing there waiting, okay, you're going to blow it ready, and then all of a sudden we get a flag. Can you tell us, is there something there that we don't know that you could tell us about that, Will?
Yeah, see, no, I just walked myself into this trap because I can't inform you about anything. Only to
you had
say
some
that the
knowledge.
players are as confused as we all were. I just know after the game, Raheem said he didn't really know what was going on either, that he was going to ask and try to get some more information, but we haven't talked to him since.
Don't nobody know.
So Wednesday will be our first chance to follow up with Raheem.
And this might be the earliest we can get this information, too. Do you have any news for the fan at this point on guys like Drake London, as far as he got banged up in the game a couple times? It seemed like Drake came back. D. Alford was knocked out of the game. He's probably in concussion protocol, I would assume, and we won't know anything about that until Wednesday. But have you got any word on those guys?
No, not on those guys. And generally, Raheem has held those until Wednesday. But I will say yesterday it was announced Nate Landman has been designated to return off of IR.
The landmine.
So
the landmine's back.
It remains to be seen where he is, and obviously that 21-day window, which opened up on Monday. But if he potentially could get back onto the field for Sunday, as we look at this Chuba Hubbard matchup, like that would be a huge get back for this defense that would allow them to do some fun things. So we'll see as it pertains to Drake London, D. Alford, those guys. But Nate Landman coming back, designated to return off of IR.
That's
Sorry,
great.
He
That's
can't
great.
go. We're gonna bring Arch out of the booth.
I would pay to see that.
Troy Anderson play quarterback and linebacker and running back. Arch can do it, no problem.
That young guy from Notre Dame,
Iron Man Arch.
J.D. Bertrand, did a pretty good job. And by the
No
way,
doubt.
congratulations to Luke Ruccaroro. He played in his first game as an Atlanta Falcon, and I thought he played with his hair on fire. I thought he was a difference maker in the defensive line. Well, there you have it. That's Falcons Audible, presented by AT&T. Like, subscribe, review at Spotify, iTunes, at AtlantaFalcons.com, and YouTube. That's Will McFadden, AtlantaFalcons.com. If you're not reading his stuff, you're missing it. You got to stay with this guy. This guy's dialed in on the team.
Rack, you better hurry
That's
up and
my
get back.
dog right over there.
Rack, you better hurry up and get back because Arch is killing it right now.
Who we playing this week? We got
Dogs.
Bulldogs on Bulldogs?
Bulldogs on Bulldogs.
Okay, all right.
Mississippi State.
Well, get yourself over to Athens and check out the Bulldogs against the Bulldogs. But that's AtlantaFalcons.com, or that's Atlanta Falcons Audible. Appreciate you being with us. Thank you, fellas.